Welcome to Raaonline Anatomy Lecture Series. The functions of cranial nerves and their associated nuclei is an important aspect of neuroanatomy. How do we describe the function of a cranial nerve? This is the structure of a peripheral nerve. This is what we see with our naked eye during our dissection. The nerve that we see is this. What is it made of? It has numerous nerve fibers. Each individual axon has got only one particular function. This one axon can have only one particular function. But the function of the nerve is the sum total of the function of its constituent nerve fibers. Is it confusing? Let's see this with an example. What is the function of a medical college? It teaches various pre- and paraclinical subjects and clinical subjects from the first year to final year, like anatomy, physiology, and so on. What is the function of an individual department like anatomy, microbiology, or biochemistry? It is to teach only a specific subject. So the function of the medical college is the sum total of the function of its constituent individual departments. Let's consider this wire as a cranial nerve. This cranial nerve has many individual cranial nerve fibers, that are axons. Each nerve fiber can have only one particular function. So this yellow fiber can have only one function, that is Y, and this red fiber can have only one function, that is R, and this blue wire can have only one function, that is blue. But the function of the cranial nerve as a whole is the sum of the function of its individual nerve fibers, that is R plus Y plus blue. So this we call it as functional component of the cranial nerve. So the functional components of a cranial nerve is the sum of the functions of the individual nerve fibers. So, according to CBME curriculum, Phase 1 MBBS students must be able to enumerate the cranial nerve nuclei with its functional component. So, we have seen what is functional components of a cranial nerve. What is cranial nerve nuclei? How do we describe the functional component of a cranial nerve nuclei? Let's consider the same example, considering this as the cranial nerve. So, each one having different function. So, these fibers, these are the axons. These are the axons, and these end or start from the nuclei present in the brainstem. So these yellow fiber ends in a nuclei which has a similar function. So this yellow is the same function as this nerve fiber, and this red ends in the red nuclei, and this blue ends in the blue nuclei. And considering another nerve with two functions, this blue and this brown. So this blue nerve fiber also ends in this blue nuclei, but this brown ends in the brown colored nuclei. So this nuclei, blue color nuclei, which has a function similar to this blue and this. So all the nerve fibers with a similar function end in the nuclei of the same function. So now we have to understand three concepts. What is the functional component of a cranial nerve? Functional components of a cranial nerve. So it is the sum total of the functions of its individual nerve fibers. So the functional component of this cranial nerve is the sum of the function of this yellow, red and blue. The functional component of this W is the function of this blue plus function of this brown. So that is the functional component of cranial nerve. Now what is cranial nerve nuclei? So nuclei means the collection of cell bodies with similar function. So these are the cranial nerve nuclei in the brainstem. Now these three, the yellow, red and the blue, are the cranial nerve nuclei associated with this cranial nerve, and this blue and brown are cranial nerve nuclei associated with this cranial nerve W. So that is the concept of cranial nerve nuclei. Now, what is the functional component of cranial nerve nuclei? Functional component of nuclei. So, this nuclei has got only one function, that is the functional component of this nuclei. And this nucleus has got only one function, that is the functional component of this nuclei. So, our competency, our objective for this lecture is to describe the functional component of the cranial nerve nuclei. So, for defining the functional components of the cranial nerve nuclei, first step is to understand the functional components of the cranial nerves so that we can easily see the functional components of the cranial nerve nuclei.